So today was the NFL trade deadline, and there was a lot of really talk about what the Jaguars are going to do. Are the Jaguars going to be sellers, which would make more sense because, hey, we just traded James Robinson last week for a fifth-round pick. The Jaguars are 2-6, and generally 2-6 teams aren't necessarily buyers. Or are they going to be sellers? There were some guys with some speculation. I know a lot of people were talking about Josh Allen, and there were a lot of teams that were interested. I think the most interested team was the Kansas City Chiefs, who actually really wanted him. Also, the Jets were out there rumored, as well as the Miami Dolphins. But luckily, Josh Allen is here to stay. And another guy was Juwan Taylor. I didn't see any rumors or anything about him, but he was a guy that Jaguar fans maybe said could get moved. But Jaguars did not sell anybody, but the Jaguars did wind up buying a wide receiver. And there was a lot of talk about, hey, maybe like Chase Claypool or DJ Moore would be out here for the Jaguars. But the Jaguars went really, really out of left field. And the Jaguars went out and grabbed Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley, which, wow, that was an interesting one. I know he was off of my radar, even though 9 months ago, when it was originally reported that Calvin Ridley and the Atlanta Falcons were probably going to end up breaking up and he is going to want a fresh start. When I saw that, I made a video, Jaguars need to trade for this guy. And then about a week later, it came out that he was going to be suspended for the 2022 season. And I kind of let off of that a little bit as, hey, 2023 was about, 18 months from the time I made that video, so I was going to hold off on that a little bit. But now at the trade deadline, Calvin Ridley gets traded. So what was the trade compensation? First of all, a 2023 fifth-round pick. So essentially the pick that the Jaguars traded, that the Jaguars got from the Jets for James Robinson, is going to be turned around and traded back over to the Falcons. And also a conditional 2024 pick. And there's a lot of different variables to this pick. It's a sixth-round pick if he is not reinstated. And then, which is pretty much a virtual certainty that he is going to be reinstated. And if so, that turns into a fifth-round pick. Now, if he makes the Jaguars roster, it becomes a fourth-round pick. And if he reaches a certain playtime milestone, it will turn into a third-round pick. So I imagine if it's like, 60% or 75% of the games played, it will turn into a third-round pick. However, that will be deleted if he gets signed to a long-term deal, or I think a deal in general. If the Jaguars give him another contract after this next season, then it will be a second-round pick. So best case scenario, this is a second round pick, which would be absolutely stellar if that does come into fruition, which I imagine it is if he continues to do what he's been doing on the Falcons. So what do the Jaguars get with Calvin Ridley? First of all, they get a proven guy. We're not trading for like a Chase Claypool, a guy that's like, okay, this guy has all this potential. We just need to have him, hit that potential and play at a consistent level. That's not what Calvin Ridley is. Calvin Ridley is already proven, and when he is on the field, he is absolute dynamite. In 2018, he had 64 receptions for 821 yards and 10 touchdowns. In 2019, he had 63 receptions for 866 yards and 7 touchdowns. And in 2020, he had 90 receptions for 1,374 yards and 9 touchdowns. So he is absolute dynamite at receiver. If he had these numbers for the Jaguars, he would be fourth all time on the Jaguars receiving list when it comes to total yardage. So very proven in just those 3 years. So what do the Jaguars need on this offense? Well, they need a guy to take the top off the defense, and that's exactly what Calvin Ridley can do. And I think most importantly, they need a red zone threat. The Jaguars, as we all know, have struggled in the red zone, whether it's Trevor Lawrence throwing interceptions, or we're fumbling in the red zone, or we're just we're just not converting, whether we only get a field goal or whether we just flat out turn it over on downs. We have not been good in the red zone. And what Calvin Ridley can do is he can haul in touchdowns. Look, in those first 3 years, 26 touchdowns. He's excellent, when it comes to these goal line packages, and he needs to do a one-on-one route against a cornerback. He's such a good route runner where he gets open, and it's electric. So when it comes to this guy, look, he's a top route runner, probably a top 5 if we're being generous route runner. At the very least, he's top 5. He is very, very excellent at that. He also has great hands, so when the ball is thrown to him, he's going to be able to catch it, and he's also an extremely fast player. Look, this is after this 2020 season, he was a top 10 receiver. And another thing about him is that, look, right now, there is no question that he is a motivated player. He wants to get back on the field. He is on Twitter and Instagram excited today. He posted on Instagram, made a post about it, basically thanking the Atlanta Falcons. Then later on, he went on to say, "To my new team, the Jacksonville Jaguars, I'm thankful and excited for my new journey. Can't wait to step back on the field in Duval. Hashtag Florida boy," because he is from Fort Lauderdale, actually. And then he went on Twitter. He's been pretty active on Twitter today. When the trade went through, he tweeted out hashtag Duval with the emojis of the smoke coming out of the nose. Someone replied to him, "I bet you are happy." He said, "I am happy." Next up, we had a subscriber to the channel, Robert C., tweet at him. He said, "Shoot us Jags fans some vids of working out or something to show us you're in football shape. Get us hyped." He replied, "I'm going to show you. Just know I'm healthy." So he's tweeting out that. He's retweeting different things about the trade. He even posted a highlight reel of him out there, ending it off with him in a photoshopped Jaguars jersey. So it's super awesome that he's out here embracing it. He's clearly very excited to be a Jacksonville Jaguar, which, hey, nowadays we get worried about that. Like, will a player, if he gets traded to the Jaguars, how happy will they be? He's extremely happy to be here, and I'm really excited to have him. Now, a little more information about him. He's going to be 28 in December, so he's still in his prime. He still has several good years left at wide receiver. In 2021, he only played 5 games before stepping away due to, I guess, some mental health issues. They didn't really go much more into it, but we know how that goes. If players have mental health issues, people speculate, but ultimately it doesn't really come out because you want the players to have their privacy. And then after the season, he was suspended for the entire 2022 season after placing $1,500 worth of bets on, different parlays. And look, they were all parlays. There's this thing going around, oh, he got suspended for betting on the Falcons against the Jaguars. It wasn't really that. I think he had like a 7 or 8 game parlay, and that was a part of it. So it wasn't like he was like targeting the Jaguars. But hey, who wouldn't bet against Urban Meyer every single game that he's playing? And right now, his current contract, in 2022, he was supposed to play under his 5th-year option. However, with his suspension, that gets pushed back a year. So the Jaguars have 1 more year of control over him until they decide whether or not they want to re-sign him, which I imagine they will, because usually when you make these kind of trades, you bring them back, and that's the hope. And under the 5th-year option, he will be owed $11.1 million. And I know next year the Jaguars will need to do some like cap maneuvering, because the Jaguars right now, I think they're going to be like over the cap, but look, I mean, the Rams can always find out ways, and the Saints, and there's all Eagles, there's all these teams. Look, I'm not worried about cap right now. The Jaguars can finagle a way into cutting, guys like Shaquille Griffin. Marvin Jones will be off the books. Like Roy Robertson Harris, restructure him. Just do whatever. I'm not super worried about that. So at the end of the day, what does this mean going forward? I think this means that our biggest need is taken care of, because if you did not bring in Calvin Ridley, then you are going to have to once again reach for a wide receiver. And really, signing a guy like Christian Kirk isn't enough this time around. You can't just go out there and find whatever the best wide receiver out there in the market is and get him, because honestly, that's not how it works nowadays. Nowadays, you need to go out there and trade for a wide receiver one. You can compare this to two situations right now in the NFL. Look, Tua, going into his third year, they said, okay, we are going to make sure that there is no excuses for you anymore. So they traded a first round pick for Tyreek Hill to pair up with a guy that they already drafted in the first round with Jalen Waddle, and they already had like Mike Gesicki on board. You also look at Jalen Hurts, the same exact situation with him going into his third year. They said, okay, first couple of years you were but we need to know if you're the guy. They traded a first-round pick for A.J. Brown to pair with another first-round pick from the same exact freaking school, actually, in Alabama with Devontae Smith. They had Goddard on board. You can even throw it back to Josh Allen in his third year when they traded for Stephon Diggs. So at this point, in 2023, we need to get to the point where we can't make excuses for Trevor Lawrence anymore. Because right now it's understandable because, I look at Trevor Lawrence like last game. He was really bad. And I don't look at that being like, oh, it's fine. We just need to get him a wide receiver one. We're good. Let's just move on. Because look, it was concerning that game. He was inaccurate. He was missing guys. It wasn't one of those games where it's like, there have been games this year where I said, look, like if he gets an alpha, we're going to be good. I didn't come away from that game thinking that. However, if you look at the true data, the raw data, it shows that you need to get your quarterback a wide receiver one in order for them to be successful. I mean, I don't make the rules. That's the data right now. You know what I mean? You look at even the Chiefs. They just traded. They couldn't afford to pay Tyreek Hill anymore, so they traded him away. And now, what do? They draft Sky Moore, and I think in the second round. And also, they go out there and they trade for Kadarius Toney. So they tried to fill that. They're double dipping when it comes to filling that Tyreek Hill void because they know they need to get that right. So no more excuses for Trevor. Like, we need to make sure in 2023 this offense is locked and loaded and ready for him to compete. This is also a jump start on the 2023 season. Like, today felt like day one of free agency, honestly, by bringing in Calvin Ridley. It's awesome. And right now we're 2-6, and I'm almost in off-season mode right now. I mean, the Jaguars have sucked all the passion out of me right now. The Jaguars can no longer hurt me on Sundays. And now my UCF nights are now ranked. So all my football energy will probably be poured into them so they can crush me on Saturdays if they lose. But yeah, right now the Jaguars are 2-6. And when you're out of the playoffs, you start to look for next offseason. And that's kind of what we're doing. And right now we got an awesome jump on the 2023 season by bringing this guy in. And really what this does is it gives us a lot of flexibility next year because the Jaguars were going to have to find a way to get creative. I mean, we're going to, like I said, Josh Allen and the Bills, they had to trade a first-round pick for Stephon Diggs. We talked about Jalen Hurts. They traded a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. Nowadays, to get these receivers don't just hit the open market anymore. The receivers that hit the open market are generally wide receiver twos like Christian Kirk or just guys like that. Very rarely, you see guys like even guys as low end as Michael Gallup gets sucked up. Chris Godwin doesn't make it to free agency. And if you're looking at the free agent market for next offseason, don't. It's bad. It is terrible. So this gives us a lot of flexibility next year. What the Jaguars need to do now, first of all, I'll say this. This does not take me out of the running of getting a wide receiver in the first round. Because there's the Quentin Johnson out of TCU. I mean, he's 6'4", 215 pounds. That guy can do pretty much anything. And I can only imagine putting him on the field with Christian Kirk, with Calvin Ridley, with Travis Etienne, that would be a dangerous offense. But I know right now the Jaguars, they need to find a true dual threat tight end, because another thing that these successful teams have is they have dual threat tight ends that can both run block and catch passes. You know, you look at the Bills, they have Dawson Knox. The Chiefs have Travis Kelce. Ravens have Mark Andrews. Eagles have Dallas Goedert. I mean, the Vikings just traded for TJ Hawkinson because they didn't think Irv Smith Jr. was enough. Like, to make that run, you need to have the tight end. The Jaguars are missing that right now. The Jaguars, the only tight end under contract through next year right now is Luke Farrell. So they need to find that, and it's most likely going to be in the draft. And that's where I would want to draft one. So that's another big thing that this offense needs. But I think really the big need is taken care of when it comes to addressing the wide receiver spot. The Jaguars got a top 10 wide receiver. Like, I have no doubt about that. I mean, Calvin Ridley, go back and look at how he was for the Atlanta Falcons. He was so good. And the Jaguars bring him here. He's hungry. He's still young. He has plenty of time where he's not going to be nicked up because he hasn't gotten hit in a long time. It's really, really exciting. It's encouraging to see that he wants to be a Jaguar and he's embracing the Jaguars and he's talking to fans and everything. That's super cool to see. The Jaguars still have some work to do, but ultimately at the end of the day, yeah, we got the wide receiver. We need to address the tight end, and we need to make sure in year 3 we can't make excuses for Trevor. We can't throw out the excuses that, oh, he needs more weapons. You know, that can hopefully be put to rest. And I mean, hopefully Trevor Lawrence is our guy. I know I can be frustrated with him at times, but I'm not ready to throw him out yet. I'm not. And I still lean toward him being the answer. It's just, you know, sometimes it's hard to defend him. And sometimes he has these games where you really scratch your head. But, you know, he just has to settle down. And hopefully the Jaguars get these weapons for him. And, you know, we'll be good going forward. So, with all that said, let me know what you guys think about the trade. Are you as excited as me? I'd love to hear from you guys. And with all that said, thank you so much for watching the video. And go Jags.
Okay, Jacksonville Jaguars. Too much for your crew to handle. Keep it lit. And this is the #1 YouTube channel by UCF Jaguar. Yeah, we about to blast off. If you've been a fan, then this is the dopest platform. Yeah, never hold back. Gotta represent for the teal and black.